When you hear the word electrolytes, you probably immediately picture like a neon-colored sports drink right after a heavy workout.
Yeah, exactly. Or, maybe a powdered hydration packet.
Yeah.
It's a very functional, very gym-centric view of biology.
Right. It's like I sweat, I lose salt, so I drink this beverage to replace it. But for today's deep dive, we're taking that concept completely out of the gym.
We really are. We're zooming way in.
Yeah, down into the microscopic world of human reproduction. So welcome to today's deep dive, where our mission is to explore the surprisingly profound connection between everyday minerals, reproductive health, and actually ancient physical practices.
It's a fascinating overlap, honestly.
It really is. And you listening, you are going to want to stick around for this one because we're pulling from this really intriguing piece of source material from the Berkeley Center. It's titled Electrolytes and Acupuncture, the Mineral Path to Egg Quality.
And it radically reframes how we should look at, the fundamental building blocks of life. It forces a complete paradigm shift.
So to start, how do we even begin to redefine electrolytes? Because, I just think of sodium and Gatorade.
Right. Well, to truly grasp the science here, we have to strip away all that commercial marketing. We need to look at them at a fundamental biochemical level.
Okay, so what are they, biologically speaking?
Electrolytes are simply charged minerals. That's it. We are primarily talking about calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium.
Just those basic minerals we get from food.
Exactly. And because they carry an electrical charge when they dissolve in the body's fluids, they literally conduct electricity.
Wait, like actual electricity?
Yes, actual electrical currents. That electrical conductivity is the language our cells use to communicate. It's how they trigger actions and maintain their structural integrity.
Okay, so the body isn't just, absorbing these minerals from a spinach salad and letting them float around at random, right? I imagine it's a pretty highly controlled environment.
Oh, highly controlled is almost an understatement. The human body manages these electrical charges through this relentless, meticulous balancing act.
Like a biological account.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Your digestive system absorbs them, your daily hydration levels dilute or concentrate them, hormones shift them around, and your kidneys constantly filter and recycle them.
That sounds like a lot of physiological heavy lifting just to move some salt around.
It is, but the goal is to keep these electrical charges in the precise locations where they are needed at the exact right concentrations, which, brings us to the core of our deep dive today.
Right. We are zooming way, way in from the macro systems of digestion down into the microscopic world of a single human egg.
Yeah, the human oocyte.
So why do these charged minerals matter so much to a human egg? I think there's this tendency to view an unfertilized egg as a passive passenger. Like we picture it just sitting there, statically waiting in the dark for fertilization.
Yeah, that passive passenger idea is a major misconception. An egg is an incredibly active, dynamic, living cell. It is constantly working.
Doing what exactly, if it's not fertilized yet?
Well, it has to grow. For one, it has to mature its own internal structures, it has to prepare its genetic material, and eventually, it has to support the massive biological undertaking of early embryo development.
So it's like a factory prepping for a massive product launch.
That is a perfect analogy. And the scientific community uses a very specific term for an egg reaching this ultimate stage of readiness. We say the egg is gaining competence.
Meaning competence. I have to say that sounds like a brutal corporate performance review, but for a microscopic cell. Like, sorry, egg, your electrical signaling wasn't up to par this quarter. We're going to have to let you go.
It is a rigorous biological threshold. Gaining competence means the egg has successfully acquired the internal machinery and the structural capacity to be fertilized and to develop normally.
And what the source material makes explicitly clear is that this competence isn't just guaranteed by good genetics, right?
No, not at all. It is deeply dependent on the local microscopic environment. Going back to your factory analogy, the egg needs a perfectly regulated power grid to run its cellular machinery.
Okay, let's explore that power grid. If the egg is a high-tech factory trying to pass its competence review, what are the specific wires and batteries making it work? Let's break down the actual minerals.
Let's do it.
The sources point to one undisputed star player in this process, and that's calcium.
Yeah, calcium is the primary catalyst. Most people associate calcium entirely with structural support.
Right.
Drinking milk to build strong bones and teeth.
Right, the old commercials.
Exactly. But in the context of cellular biology in the egg, calcium is the ultimate action molecule. At the exact moment of fertilization, the egg must experience a massive shift in its internal calcium levels.
To, like, wake up.
Yes, to activate itself and actually begin the process of dividing and developing into an embryo.
Hmm.
Researchers describe this phenomenon as calcium oscillations.
Oscillations, that implies a rhythm. It's not just a switch flipping from off to on or a floodgate opening.
The rhythm is the most crucial part. When the sperm interacts with the egg, it triggers the release of calcium from storage centers inside the egg itself.
Oh, so the calcium is already inside.
Yes, stored up. And this release creates a wave that ripples across the entire cell. Then it resects, then it waves again. It is a dynamic, rhythmic signaling process.
Wow. A biological pulse?
Precisely. If the cell were simply flooded with calcium all at once, the activation process would stall, or the cell could literally die. It requires that specific, rhythmic oscillation to properly unlock the machinery of early development.
Okay, here's where I want to look critically at how we apply this kind of information, because there is this pervasive wellness myth out there that more is always better.
Oh, absolutely, the supplement trap.
Right. If I hear that calcium is the spark that triggers fertilization, my immediate instinct, and probably the instinct of anyone listening who's trying to optimize their health, is to go buy a massive bottle of calcium supplements and just flood my system.
And the data strongly cautions against that instinct. Biological systems thrive on precision, not sheer volume.
So overloading is bad.
Very bad. When researchers analyze the fluid surrounding the egg, they find that excessively high levels of calcium in that local environment are actually associated with poorer embryo quality.
Oh, wow. So it's a Goldilocks situation. Too little, and you don't get the spark to start the factory. Too much, and you damage the delicate machinery.
Exactly. Proper regulation and balance matter far more than sheer quantity. The body demands that delicate balance to create the perfect oscillation.
That makes a lot of sense.
And, calcium isn't operating in isolation. It needs a massive support system, which brings us to magnesium.
Right, magnesium. The sources note that magnesium supports energy production, enzyme activity, and cell stability. So if the egg requires massive amounts of cellular energy to divide, is magnesium essentially acting as the cell's battery pack?
It's closer to the foreman directing the power supply.
Okay, how so?
Well, the actual energy in a cell is carried by a molecule called ATP. But ATP on its own is largely biologically inactive. It just sits there.
Like coal waiting to be burned.
Yes. Magnesium has to physically bind to the ATP molecule to make that energy usable for the cell's enzymes. So when the egg is undergoing this incredibly energy-intensive process of maturation and division, magnesium is the critical mineral regulating the enzymes.
It allows the machinery to actually access the power it needs.
Exactly. Without magnesium, the energy is there, but the factory can't use it.
That makes perfect sense. It's the regulator unlocking the power. And then rounding out our essential minerals, we have sodium and potassium.
Sodium and potassium are the great stabilizers. They maintain the electrical gradients across the cell membrane.
What does that mean in plain English? Gradients.
Basically keeping the pressure right.
Yeah.
Sodium regulates the fluid balance, ensuring the cell doesn't swell or shrink dangerously, while potassium maintains the actual electrical charge inside the cell.
So they work in tandem.
They do. They keep the environment stable so the calcium pulses and the magnesium-driven energy production can happen without interruption.
And potassium has its own Goldilocks zone too, doesn't it? The research points out that excessive potassium, just like excessive calcium, is linked to poorer embryo development.
It all comes back to that recurring theme of precise balance. These charged minerals have to be present in the exact right proportions at the exact right time for the egg to gain competence.
So we have this incredibly complex, perfectly balanced chemical cocktail. Calcium is pulsing rhythmically, magnesium is acting as the foreman unlocking the energy, and sodium and potassium are keeping the structural and electrical pressure steady.
That's the power grid in action.
But these minerals don't just exist in a void, right? They have a physical location deep within the body.
Right, they're contained within a very specific microenvironment called the follicular fluid.
I found the concept of the follicular fluid so fascinating in the source material. The egg develops inside a small, fluid-filled sac called a follicle on the ovary, and this fluid is basically the egg's immediate universe.
It is. Everything the egg interacts with is in that fluid.
It contains a mix of hormones, proteins, waste products, and all those crucial electrolytes we just broke down. I like to picture the follicular fluid as the soil a seed grows in.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Because, you can have the best genetically flawless seed in the world, but if the soil it's planted in is toxic or severely depleted of nutrients, that seed simply cannot thrive.
And the science supports that analogy completely. Reviews of follicular biology repeatedly point to this local fluid environment as a major deciding factor in whether an egg develops normally.
Where does this fluid even come from?
The follicular fluid is essentially a filtrate of the blood. What is circulating in your broader vascular system eventually makes its way in some form into that microenvironment.
So what does bad soil look like at a microscopic level? Like, what happens when the fluid environment turns hostile?
The sources outline a few specific conditions. If the body is experiencing systemic inflammation, or if the individual is poorly nourished, those conditions reflect directly in the follicular fluid.
Because it's filtering from the blood.
Right. And one of the most damaging states for this fluid is oxidative stress.
Okay, let's define oxidative stress for the listener because, it's a term thrown around a lot in health circles, but the actual mechanics of it are rarely explained.
Yeah, it's become a bit of a buzzword. At a cellular level, oxidative stress occurs when there is an imbalance of free radicals.
And free radicals are?
They are highly unstable molecules that are missing an electron. Because they are unstable, they aggressively roam around trying to steal electrons from other healthy molecules.
Like microscopic thieves.
Exactly. And they will steal from the proteins in the DNA inside an egg cell. If the follicular fluid is suffering from oxidative stress, these rogue molecules are essentially damaging the factory's machinery faster than it can be repaired.
Wow, so if the fluid is inflamed, chemically imbalanced, or oxidatively stressed, the egg simply cannot achieve that vital state of competence.
It just can't. Which logically means that cellular nourishment and the active clearing of that oxidative stress are non-negotiable for reproductive health.
You cannot build a highly sensitive bioelectrical factory in a toxic swamp.
That is the biological reality. The egg relies entirely on the integrity of that fluid for its protection and nourishment.
Okay, so I'm looking at our outline here, and this brings us to a major conceptual leap in the source material that I really want to interrogate.
Let's hear it.
If we accept that this microscopic environment of fluids and minerals is incredibly delicate and absolutely vital to human reproduction, how can we possibly influence it from the outside?
Right, it seems untouchable.
Exactly. The ovaries are buried deep within the pelvis. The follicular fluid is microscopic, which brings us to the source material's focus on the role of acupuncture. And I have to push back here, or at least ask for a rigorous mechanical explanation.
I completely understand the skepticism.
Because I struggle to connect these dots. We are talking about a physical therapy, placing tiny superficial needles in the skin, maybe on the ankle or the arm or the abdomen. And the claim here is that this specific physical intervention has the geographic and biological reach to literally alter the chemical and mineral makeup of the fluids surrounding a microscopic egg deep inside an ovary.
It sounds like a massive leap.
It sounds almost mystical. How does a needle in the skin change the soil inside an ovary?
It sounds implausible until you map out the physiological cascade. It has nothing to do with magic or mystical pathways. It is a direct manipulation of the central nervous system and the vascular system.
Okay, walk me through it.
When an acupuncture needle penetrates the skin, it creates a microtrauma. It is a tiny, localized injury.
Okay, so the body senses a tiny injury. What happens next?
The peripheral nervous system detects that microtrauma and sends a signal up to the spinal cord and the brain. The central nervous system processes that signal and reflexes back, triggering a release of local signaling molecules that cause vasodilation.
Vasodilation meaning the blood vessels physically widen and expand.
Exactly. The blood vessels widen to rush healing factors to the site of the microtrauma. But, and this is the key depending on where those needles are placed, particularly in specific segments of the abdomen and lower body, that nervous system reflex can cause vasodilation in the deeper pelvic organs.
Including the ovaries.
Including the ovaries. You are mechanically forcing the body to increase blood flow to the reproductive system.
So the increased blood flow is the delivery mechanism.
Yes.
By opening up the vascular highways to the ovaries, what are we actually achieving in the follicular fluid? Like, what changes?
Two critical things happen. First, you are delivering a better, more robust supply of oxygen, nutrients, and those perfectly balanced electrolytes to the follicle.
Bringing in the good stuff.
Right. And second, and perhaps more importantly, that increased blood flow acts as a vital flushing mechanism. It actively clears out the metabolic waste and those unstable free radicals we talked about earlier.
Oh, wow.
By improving circulation, you are directly mitigating the oxidative stress and inflammation within the follicular fluid.
You are literally flushing the toxic swamp and bringing in fresh water.
Yes. That's exactly what's happening. And the improved blood flow specifically targets and supports a highly specialized group of cells called granulosa cells.
Granulosa cells. Okay, where do they fit into the factory analogy? Are they the assembly line workers?
They're more like the nurse cells or the direct supply line. Granulosa cells physically surround the egg inside the follicle. In fact, they have tiny microscopic projections that literally poke through the egg's outer shell.
Wait, really? They poke through the shell?
Yeah, they penetrate the shell to hand-deliver nutrients and manage the chemical environment inside. Their entire biological purpose is to feed the egg and regulate that follicular fluid.
That is incredible.
It is. So by forcing better blood circulation to the ovaries, you're ensuring these nurse cells are incredibly healthy and highly functioning. And if the nurse cells are healthy, the egg is healthy.
Okay, the mechanical logic actually tracks. Microtrauma triggers the nervous system, which dilates the blood vessels, which increases pelvic blood flow, which feeds the nurse cells, which clean up the follicular fluid.
You've got it.
But do we have modern measurable data showing this actually works in a clinical setting, like beyond just the theory?
We have concrete data. The source material highlights a significant 2023 randomized controlled trial.
Okay, what did they find?
The researchers looked at patients utilizing acupuncture during IVF treatments. They documented improved oocyte, or egg quality, and better overall clinical outcomes. But the most compelling piece of data wasn't just the outcome, it was the mechanism.
What do you mean?
The trial documented actual changes in what is called follicular fluid metabolomics.
Metabolomics. Let's translate that for the listener, because that sounds like the smoking gun here.
It really is the smoking gun. Metabolomics is the comprehensive scientific study of the chemical fingerprints left behind by cellular processes.
Chemical fingerprints.
Yeah. It is the study of all the tiny metabolites, the end products of metabolism, like amino acids, lipids, and sugars, within a biological sample. It's essentially analyzing the cellular exhaust.
So researchers didn't just look at the eggs under a microscope and say, well, they look healthier today.
No. They extracted the microscopic follicular fluid from the ovary, analyzed the chemical exhaust, and proved that the environment had fundamentally changed.
Wow. The physical intervention of acupuncture definitively changed the local biochemistry of the fluid.
Exactly. The chemical fingerprint was different. It proved the existence of a more favorable, chemically balanced environment surrounding the egg.
That's wild.
And this 2023 trial is supported by other randomized studies referenced in the text, which similarly found improvements in the number of mature eggs retrieved, higher fertilization rates, and healthier granulosa cells in patients receiving acupuncture.
It is genuinely remarkable to see this level of hard data bridging the gap between a physical, systemic therapy and a microscopic cellular result.
It really validates the practice.
And it clarifies why institutions that operate at the intersection of Eastern and Western medicine, like the Berkeley Center mentioned in our sources, lean so heavily into the specific science to support reproductive wellness.
Right. They aren't just treating the abstract concept of fertility. They are using physical therapies to actively manage the bioelectrical and chemical environment of the cells themselves.
It represents a profound synthesis of disciplines. It takes a broad, systemic concept, improving the body's overall vascular flow and nervous system response, and maps it directly onto measurable, microscopic improvements in electrolyte balance and cellular nourishment.
Perfectly said.
So, let's bring you, the listener, back up to the surface. We have journeyed through some incredibly dense but fascinating biology today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by redefining everyday electrolytes, taking them out of the gym and recognizing them as the charged electrical power grid of the human body. We zoomed in on the dynamic, rhythmic calcium oscillations that act as the vital spark for early development.
And the precise magnesium formin unlocking the energy required to fuel it.
Exactly. We explored the micro-universe of the follicular fluid, establishing that the chemical soil matters just as much as the genetic seed. And finally, we unpacked the physiological mechanics of how a physical intervention like acupuncture can trigger a vascular cascade that literally rewrites the chemical health of that microscopic fluid.
And you know the reason this deep dive matters to anyone listening, even if reproductive biology isn't your primary interest right now, is because it offers undeniable proof that the macro choices we make have a direct, measurable impact on the deepest, most microscopic environments in our bodies.
It's all connected.
Completely. The therapies we utilize, the ways we consciously improve our circulation, the delicate balance of the nutrients and minerals we absorb, it all filters down. Systemic health dictates local cellular competence.
It is a powerful reminder that our bodies are deeply interconnected ecosystems. Nothing operates in a vacuum. Which leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to ponder long after this deep dive is over.
I love a good takeaway.
We just walked through hard clinical proof that a physical intervention like acupuncture can demonstrably alter the microscopic metabolomics and the precise mineral balance of the fluid surrounding a single human egg deep inside the body.
Right.
So ask yourself this. What other hidden cellular environments in our bodies are being actively shaped and chemically altered by physical therapies? Therapies that we previously assumed only affected our superficial muscles or our joints.
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
If we can literally change the chemical soil of a single reproductive cell just by guiding the body's blood flow, what other microscopic landscapes are we changing without even realizing it?
It really forces you to reconsider the untapped potential of physical therapies across every system in the human body.
It certainly changed my perspective. The next time you are hydrating, I guarantee you will be thinking about the bioelectrical wiring of your cells instead of just muscle recovery. Keep wondering, keep exploring the mechanisms behind the headlines, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.